What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's going on with the charts for all these different tickers, what's happening with tomorrow, as we have important data coming out from Jerome Powell giving a speech, not to mention more data from the Fed. And I'm also going to talk about earnings and different factors which are affecting these markets. But before I break into these all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull and deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 free stocks. You deposit $25,000 more, you're guaranteed 75 of them. And the offer ends very soon in just about 10 hours. So check it out before they run out. The offer is almost over. Anyways, for the market, we had a very, very crazy day. Once again, what happened was SPY got this nice little gap down. It gapped down right over here in the 508. It's got a nice push up towards about 509, and we failed to break past 510. In my videos, I mentioned if we broke past 510, we'd turn back to bullish and this thing could start running. But if we fail to break it, expect to move to the downside, and that's what ended up happening. In my video from yesterday, I also mentioned I went over the bullish and bearish cases. Let me just note that my predictions are not always going to be correct because I'm a human and I don't always know what will happen tomorrow in the markets. But I did break down the levels, and I told you that if SPY lost supports such as 507, expect a big move to the downside. And that's exactly what ended up happening. So the question is, what's happening for tomorrow to SPY in the markets? What on earth is so important? Why is there going to be such a big move? And the answer is based off the data and Jerome Powell. So firstly, when the market opens tomorrow, we have 15 minutes until we have more manufacturing PMI data coming out. Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, May 1st, 2024, by the way. So tomorrow's Wednesday, the middle of the week. 15 minutes after market open, look for some volatility as we have this manufacturing PMI. Then 30 minutes after market open at 10 o'clock a.m., we have more data coming out. We have the JOLTS job openings, the JOLTS job quits, and the ISM manufacturing PMI. All this data is going to be very important for the Fed's policies and also understanding how the labor market is looking. And then after that, we have a couple of hours of free time for the market to just do its thing. This will likely be the time the market just kind of trades sideways, doesn't do as much. So I suspect we're going to see some volatility for the first, I would say, 30 minutes of the day. And then the market's going to be very sideways, kind of boring for the next couple of hours until we get to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At 2 p.m., we have the interest rate hike decision coming out for tomorrow. This is when we're going to be listening to what the Fed says about rates. And then don't forget that there's like over a 96% chance or so that they're going to be keeping rates the same. But then what's going to be important is going to be their projections. Do they project a rate cut this year or not? So that's going to be key. And then at 2:30 p.m., the last thing of the day is going to be Jerome Powell's speech at the press conference. So it's going to be a very wild day, lots of data and such. Once again, look for volatility for the first 15 minutes and first 30 minutes of the day. Look for some free time for the market for a couple of hours since we're going to be trading sideways until we get to the rate hike decision and then Jerome Powell's speech at 2:30 p.m. So what's happening with all this data? As a reminder, it's actually about a 95.6% chance the Fed is going to keep rates the same. This is what the market's pricing in, and this is because of what we're seeing from previous pieces of data. The question, however, is not about what's going to happen, because we know they're most likely going to keep rates the same, at least during this next FOMC meeting. The question is what's going to happen in June? What is the Fed saying about June? There's a 91.6% chance the Fed's going to keep rates the same. For July, right now the market thinks there's a 78% chance to keep rates the same again. So we'll have to wait and see what we end up getting. The market thinks there might be a cut in September to November around that period. That's what the market's trying to think, but we'll just have to wait and see. So that's what's going to be very key for the markets. The market dropped a bit because there's a lot of talk about Jerome Powell being hawkish, Jerome Powell causing a rug pull and this and that. That's what the market's kind of like anticipating now, excuse me, because of all this news about inflation being high and such. When you look at the inflationary data, we have CPI right over here. If you guys look at the chart, this has been going up slowly. CPI is continuing to climb up, and it's well above the Fed's targets currently. Same thing with the current CPI for core. So that's very important because the Fed's in a position where they have to keep rates likely higher for longer. But we will see if they still anticipate any kind of like rate hike or not, and how the tone is of Jerome Powell. Now, another factor for the markets would be earnings, which just came out. Today is Tuesday. We just had Amazon, AMD, and Super Micro announce their earnings. Let me say something about earnings, guys. Earnings are very, very manipulated and biased, in my opinion. There could be days where companies have very good earnings, but one thing is off, like revenue, and then the company's share price just crashes. or they could have not the best of earnings, but then they announce something decent, or at least for guidance, and that they choose to pump the markets. It seems to me like these institutions can move stocks the way they want to, and the best thing to do is just kind of follow the price action, see how we move. So, with that being said, let's talk about what we're seeing on the charts. Right now, for Amazon, we're actually up a bit after they had some pretty decent earnings overall, in my personal opinion, topping expectations with profits just increasing. EPS was a beat at 98 cents for Amazon. Revenue was $143.3 billion above expectations. Amazon Web Services was $25 billion. That's above expectations in revenue. And then advertising revenue was $11.8 billion. That's also above expectations. Operating income soared more than 200% in the period to about $15.3 billion, outpacing the revenue growth. And that was a lot better than what we expected. On top of this, we also saw their operating profits up about 62% and net income more than tripled, which is good for them. Sales increased 13%, which is very good. Not to mention the fact that their jump in profitability for the second quarter is measured to be even better than expected. They're saying that operating income will be $10 to $14 billion, which is better than expected. They're expecting good growth, good acceleration in their growth as well. And despite the fact that they've been laying off some employees, we're seeing some good guidance overall. We're seeing more sales projections, which are quite good. They didn't announce a dividend, but what is good about them is the fact that we're seeing some good guidance, and that is what's helping the share price once again increase. So that's why Amazon's up. AMD, on the other hand, is down almost 7%, despite the fact that earnings were pretty good, in my opinion. We had about 62 cents for the adjusted EPS. That is above expectations. Revenue was $5.47 billion above expectations. Uh, with that happening, I also want to note that we had a 6% annual growth overall when it comes to their sales. That's what they're expecting in the current quarter. And that's not bad whatsoever. They also reported net income at 123 million. That is not bad. Pretty good stuff overall. Excuse me, guys. But looking at what we're seeing, forecasts are pretty good. But that's not really enough for the share price to stop from falling. I would say earnings are pretty good. They didn't get a big beat in earnings. They're just pretty good. Their gaming division was a little bit weaker, which is actually down quite a bit. So some sectors were not as great, but for the most part, I would say earnings were pretty good, despite that the share price is still down about 7%. Super Micro had not so good earnings, but their guidance was pretty strong. And despite that the share price is down 11%, EPS was a beat, revenue was a slight miss, but their revenue is still up over 200% compared to before, so it's not entirely bad, but it missed expectations. And their guidance has been pretty strong as they raise guidance. So despite that, the share price of Supermicro is still down. With that being said, guys, that is it for most of the data I'm going to be going over, at least for the markets. Let's talk about tomorrow and what could end up playing out. So the daily candlestick on SPY is a bit more bearish, which suggests that there might be a little bit more downside coming. You could see that when it comes to this trend line, we could sometimes dip a little bit below this before we try to rebound. So I personally think what's going to happen is there might be a little bit more downside coming for SPY, the QQQ, and the others, just a little bit more. And then we have some data to be reacting to tomorrow, and then Jerome Powell will cause the bigger move. But this is what I'm seeing for SPY. So looking at SPY right here, we're looking very bearish after this big drop. I think that we could be testing the 499s very soon. If we lose 499, we could go all the way down to 497. So somewhere here, I think it's going to base. Then we're going to get a small rebound, maybe because of the rate hike decision or something like that. I anticipate there's going to be a small rebound of either 497 or 499, depending on where we bounce. So in that range, expect support to some buyers to try to defend, a little bit more selling than a bounce. And then once we approach this trend line again in the low 500s, we will see if Jerome Powell causes a big pump into the 505 plus area, or if he gives us a big rug pull and we just start to continue to collapse all the way down to 491. All right, so look for a little dip, then a bounce. So we might dip to 497 to 499. And one of those supports I think that we should be dipping to, then bounce. Once we rebound, we could be retesting the 500s. However, Jerome Powell, whatever the guy says, will have a big effect on whether or not we get a big bounce or not. Once he starts speaking, this could be like a fake bounce. We just get another big rug pull all the way back down to 491, or we could break out to 505 plus. We'll wait and see. For the QQQ, it's the same thing essentially that I am seeing. I think this might dip a little bit more. We could get very close to this 420 to 421 area. And then once it dips like this, we'll look for a little rebound towards the 423 to 424 area up here. And then we'll see if Jerome Powell causes a big push up to 428, or if the guy gives us a big rug pull all the way down to the 415 area. So look for a little dip, a bounce intraday, maybe when the rate hike decision comes out, and then we'll see what happens. And by the way, guys, there's going to be a period where we're very, very sideways. That's after all this data comes out. So just to clarify, we might dip a little bit, then we might slowly rebound and just trade sideways for some time before the rate hike decision comes out. I think when the decision comes out, we might get a little pop before Jerome Powell causes the real move. So look for that price action, a little dip, a bounce, some sideways price action. Then Jerome Powell is going to cause the real move. Wait for that very, very carefully. On to Nvidia is going to likely retest 850. Then it could get a rejection, actually come all the way down towards 830. I think there's a risk of that forming this double top like structure. A pop and drop like move is very possible. Once we're in this 830 area, we will see if we get a big bounce or not. If we lose 830, there could be a bigger dip coming all the way down to 815 if Powell gives us the rug pull, or if Jerome Powell is more dovish and he causes the market to push, we're going to be looking for 862. I'll be waiting to see what Jerome Powell says. Expect a little bit more downside on Nvidia than a bounce, and then we'll see what Jerome Powell causes. Does the bounce continue, or do we get a big rug pull? That's what I find to be very, very probable. For Tesla, it's the same thing essentially. I think that Tesla's approaching support at our hourly 50 EMA or even at this 180 zone. This is where we have a critical level. It also depends on the news for tomorrow. Tesla might dip a little bit more, retest and grab liquidity in the 180 zone. Might drop a bit more, then try to rebound a bit, retest 185 or so, maybe go a little higher, then come back down trading sideways. Then we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. The guy might cause this thing to push all the way up to 190, or he could give us the big rug pull all the way down to 175. So look for a little drop tomorrow on Tesla in the morning. Might grab liquidity right here in our demand zone. Then it might rebound back up to our 20 EMA at 185. Then come back down and trade sideways for some time. Then we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. He might launch Tesla back up or cause a big rug pull. We'll just have to wait and see. On top of that, the last one, excuse me, the last main one I'm going to be going over is Aapl. Apple's approaching its earnings. I think that we have this liquidity grab right over here. We might come down, retest 170, then bounce. I think that we might be making our way back up to about the 171s. Then we might start trading sideways. That's what I anticipate to be the most likely possibility. Once we're in this 171 area, we will see if Jerome Powell causes us to fill this imbalance and push all the way up to at least 174 again, or if we come all the way back down to the 166 area. It all depends on what Jerome Powell says, so we'll just have to wait and see and be very, very patient in the process. On top of all of this, that is it for like the main five. Now let's just focus on the other tickers that I have. As a reminder, we also have Palantir. Palantir is currently looking a bit more bearish. I think it could actually dip a little bit more. We're at support at 21.8. We could dip a little bit more, make our way down towards 21.5, like all the way down here. And then we will see if we get a little rebound again intraday back up to 21.8. So look for a little drop, a little bit lower to 21.5 or so into the 21s, then a bounce back up, retest of 21.8. That's what I think is the most likely possibility. And then we'll see if Jerome Powell causes a rug pull or not. If Powell pumps us, we're going to be going back up towards the high here at 23. If Powell gives us the rug pull, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 20.5. And even the 19s could be coming in again. It depends on what Jerome Powell says. Look for a little dip, then a bounce, and then we'll see what happens after that. For Super Micro, in my personal opinion, that this is looking pretty bearish. We had a big drop because of their miss on revenue. It could be approaching 750 tomorrow. It may even dip a bit more towards 729. So look for a little dip right over here before it tries to rebound later. Jerome Powell could affect it to some extent, but it might be relatively weak because of its earnings. So just keep that in the back of your mind, guys. It's down 10% for now, so look for more downside. Rivian, we popped up a bit, we came back down, might dip a little bit more towards support right over here at 8.75. If that fails, let's look at 8.6. Might come down a bit more into that range, bounce back up towards our 20 EMA at $9 after we get the rate hike decision. And then it depends on Powell. If Powell pumps us, we're going back up to the high at 9.4. If Powell gives us the rug pull, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 8.4. Look for a little drop right over here towards our 0.618 retracement, a rebound towards the 20 EMA, and then sideways price action, and then Jerome Powell will cause either a pump or a dump. For SoFi, still looking kind of bearish. I was hoping we would hold 6.8. We actually went lower because the market is still looking kind of weak. So we're entering new territory for SoFi. Our next support is going to be all the way down here towards 6.6, followed by 6.4. So I do see it's potentially dipping all the way down to about 6.4 to 6.6, this range right over here. And then we might see a little rebound intraday back up to about 6.8, followed by Jerome Powell's speech. Powell could pump this into the 7.2s, or it could cause a big rug pull towards 6.25. It all depends on what Jerome Powell says, so we'll just have to wait and see. Look for a little dip, followed by a bounce is the most likely possibility. The IWM Russell 2000 could tip a bit more. We're at this 195 support. I think it might test 195. It could go a little bit lower towards 190, just like the very high 193s, 193.8 to 194 could come. So a little bit more downside, then a bounce back up towards 196.5. And then we will see what happens after that. When Jerome Powell is about to start his speech, we might be very sideways in the beginning in this range once we rebound. And then when Jerome Powell gives his speech, he could cause the Russell to go all the way up towards 200, or he could cause a big rug pull all the way back down to 191. We'll just have to wait and see. For AMD, we're actually down about 7% right now, looking kind of bearish. There is going to be a risk of this tipping a bit. Look for a retest of our resistance at 149, then a rejection, and we could just continue to fall to 144, even lower levels. Once we lose that, if we lose 144, we could be sinking all the way down to 140. We look kind of weak right now, and we might be kind of weak tomorrow relative to the market. For ARM, we're looking a bit more bearish. We're kind of turning right here on our 4-hour time frame. We could retest resistance later on. So look for a little dip towards support at 97. If that fails us, I do see 94 coming. A little rebound might come once we get the rate hike decision, so watch for that. We could retest 98. Then we might come down lower, and then we'll see what Jerome Powell says. So a little dip right here to our key support at 94, a rebound, and some sideways price action. We'll see what Jerome Powell causes. If he causes a pump, we're going up to 105 again. If he causes the rug pull, we're going to be seeing a big dip. We'll just have to wait and see. Coinbase is looking kind of weak. I did call out the support right over here at this 20. I was talking about 202 being our support. That's actually close to where we were, a little bit higher than that. So tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get some liquidity grabs at 200, then a rebound towards 210, and then Jerome Powell will cause a big move. Powell may launch this back up to 220, or he could give us the big rug pull all the way down to the 190s. We'll just have to wait and see. Amazon is currently up in the afternoons, but it's not that much. It's actually kind of flat for the most part, so it's kind of lackluster. Tomorrow, it might try to outperform and try to retest 178.6 and eventually climb towards 180, then reject and trade kind of sideways. It might outperform the market a bit, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. Earnings were not bad for it, so we'll see. And then Jerome Powell will cause a big move after that. He may launch this all the way back up towards 183, or he could cause the rug pull all the way back down towards 171. We'll just have to wait and see. For Meta, we're currently approaching the support. We're actually dipping a little bit more. So our key support is going to be around 424. We might dip towards 424 on Meta, and then we might try to rebound after that towards 430. And I think we might shuffle around the 430 area after getting a little dip. And then Jerome Powell is either going to launch this back up towards 444 or give us a big rug pull into the 410. So we'll just have to wait and see. Microsoft is seeing downside right here, not looking too good. So we're at support right here. Could go a little lower towards 388 to 385, that range down there. Then Jerome Powell is either going to cause this to bounce back up towards 397, or we're about to drop even lower. So look for a little dip to 388, then a bounce on Microsoft, and then we'll see if Jerome Powell helps give us a follow through, or if he gives us a rug pull. We'll just have to wait and see. Google is looking not the best right now. We could dip a little bit more towards our 50 EMA at 162.5. We could be testing 162.5, then rebounding. So we'll see if we get a big bounce back up towards 167.5, or if we get a big rug pull all the way down towards this imbalance fill at 158. I'll be watching just to be safe. For the VIX, we're actually starting to push to the upwards direction at least a bit. As we push higher, we're going to be looking at the 50 EMA at 16.1 as our resistance. We also have support around 15.27. We have those two areas to be watching for. Will we get a big rug pull and start dipping down to fill this gap way down here? Will Jerome Powell cause the VIX to drop down to the 13s if he causes the market to bounce? Or is Jerome Powell about to cause the market to drop really hard and the VIX is going to explode back up towards 18? I don't know, guys. We'll just have to wait and see. For the 10-year Treasury yield, this is going to make a big move tomorrow. Will Powell be hawkish, causing this to break out above the resistance, which would be bearish for the stock market? Or is the guy about to just be kind of dovish or in the middle, be indecisive, causing this to dip a little bit to fill its gap down here at 4.5, which could help the market bounce? We'll just have to wait and see. Will the dollar continue to break out thanks to Powell? Is the dollar about to get a rug pull? We'll just have to wait and see, guys, at this point. With that being said, for tomorrow, expect some volatility for the first 15 and 30 minutes. Market may dip a little bit more in my personal opinion, but watch support on these key levels, especially for SPY. And then once we base at our supports, look for a little rebound, especially when the rate hike decision comes out most likely. And then none of that matters. What matters will be Jerome Powell's speech. Jerome Powell is either going to cause this these stocks to either get a big break to the upside or a big move to the downside. It all depends on his words, guys. I can't really promise anything, so we just have to be prepared for anything and be open-minded nonetheless. All right, so thank you for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day, guys. I really appreciate every single one of you. And I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow to talk about some data and the FOMC meeting. Thanks again, and peace out.